I don't think, unless the board wants to make some type of motion on the strategic planning thing, I'm just thinking, my thought is that we could continue to determine whether there are some avenues to get payment, or something like that. But I think the amount that they were talking about, in my mind, was so far over our head that it wasn't even something to consider realistically, unless there was someone out there, some agency or multiple agencies that would consider funding it for us. I do think we gain value from it, but I don't think I gained $200,000 value from it. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed, and Craig can tell you better, but, and I know that Vertower is giving us valuable information that's closer to reality than the guessing. But I'm noticing we're getting more business jets in here than we have in the last 5 years. But until business is built here, like Chemours is a good example, that used to be DuPont, right?
Right.
So Chemours is going to come in here regardless. Spartan Foods used to own Hardee's restaurants, and they used to come in here periodically back in the 90s, I think, and they'd go to their. But I think people are going to come here regardless. We're not a destination airport per se. They got to have a reason to come here. And like Bill's saying, I get back to the Amazon thing. Amazon probably picked that because it's right in the center of the state. Right. It's right near Interstate 4. Right. Interstate 4 goes to 75 and it goes to 95 and it goes to Miami and it goes to Jacksonville. We don't. I think we keep their cards on file and we keep in touch. Maybe Craig just reaches out every 6 months or so and says hello.
Okay.
And let's see what it looks like 2 or 3 years down the road.
Okay.
It is a lot of money to pay, even if it's a grant.
Yeah.
Using $200,000 of taxpayers' money or whatever portion we got to put in is just a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For this little country airport, where we're at this point. So.
Okay. So unless I hear otherwise, we'll just table that discussion and we'll look for other opportunities to get the strategic planning done that doesn't cost us that kind of money. All right, that's the end of my topics. Vice Chairman Dagenet, over to you.
Nothing new.
Nothing new.
No.
If you chair, Mr. Fryer. I was going to say something earlier, but gosh, it's a bummer getting old. I've forgotten what it was, but thank you.
Safety and Security Chairman, Mr. Lovewood. Okay. Mr. Kirkland.
Nothing.
And to Ms. Hall.
So at the last meeting, I presented the site prep and planting costs that it was going to take for us to get the 250 acres that I'd identified that I thought really should be site prepared this coming year. That was the plan. But I got pushback from it on that, so I went back and I did a scaled down version where I did about 141 acres, which would be this along the road here, and the 28 acres in the north end. I think the other part might not be affected quite so much by it. And so that other part would be budgeted in the 2026-27 budget. But yesterday in the workshop, David brought to my attention that there are now some restrictions on the use of airport funds for non-aeronautical purposes, which was news to me. And that this restriction going forward, it's going to seriously impact the planning and the timing for future timber activities. So I'd appreciate it if our chairman or David, could explain to the whole board, because not everybody was here yesterday, how do you see this restriction impacting how we have future expenses being approved by the board?
Well, it's, I don't have that stuff in front of me. Bottom line was from the, what's it called, 25.
Grant assurance?
Grant assurance number 25.
Yeah.
The research that you did in preparing for the discussion of the Part 16 complaint that was made introduced some information that I had not really been aware of, and that was that in the, in that grant assurance 25 language, it says that, let me find it right here.
There you go.
All revenues generated by the airport and any local taxes on aviation fuel established after December 30th, 1987 will be expended by it for the capital or operating costs of the airport, the local airport system, or other local facilities which are owned or operated by the owner or operator of the airport and which are directly and substantially related to the actual air transportation of passengers or property or for noise mitigation purposes on or off the airport. So as I read that revenue restriction, I don't see how we can spend airport revenue on timber forestation growth or doing anything with timber out of the monies that we earn through airport operations. Now, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe Mr. Taylor could inform me if I'm not reading that right, but it just seems to me that to take our airport operating funds and just start spending money on forestation is in violation of that grant assurance 25. Now, maybe other airports have found a way to get around that or somehow define forestation operations as somehow adding to the air transportation of passengers or property. But I don't see it myself, and so I just, would be open to discussion on the board about how we could possibly consider spending a bunch of money on thousands of acres of forestation that don't really have an immediate impact on our runway or our airport operations. So that's my thought.
So where we are in this point in time is that there needs to be some decision made on how we're going to do it. I mean, we're coming up on a new budget. We've got it sitting out of there, so my question then is based on this information, I'd like to request that we come up with some sort of rule or something whereby I know how to operate so that if the future, if it's such a thing where the future timber expenses are going to be contingent on a timber sale and having that money in hand prior to doing any kind of timber expenditure, then I just feel like that
To me, that
we
gets
need to talk about.
Yeah, to me, that gets around this because it's not money that's made off of aviation fuel and leasehold property, which is, what the airport operation fund is. But if you make money off of timber sale, by all means, you can use that
Back in.
for managing timber operations. I just don't think, from what I read anyway of this, that we can take monies that are part of the airport operations budget and use it for forestation work.
Yeah.
So
I don't have any experience with that grant assurance, but we can all read it. It seems plain. It seems to require that a timber operation has to be self-sustaining.
Right. And I think historically, when I came on the board, that's what was happening with Mr. Harris and the plan that he had put in place and what the airport was doing. I think too, with the assistance maybe of Camp Landing, Paul Catlett that was there is now retired, but I think they had coordinated together to come up with a plan for the airport. And that's how we have the timber we have. And of course, lost the timber that we did lose during the huge fires of late 1990s, I guess. So that's my recollection of how that process was done, that it was a self-sustaining endeavor as far as timber and reforestation. So I think Ms. Hall's brought up a good point, is that as a board, we need to come up with, okay, what's our policy going to be? How are we going to then implement that policy so that we can do whatever is needed to be done with respect to timber harvesting and reforestation?
In a self-sustaining manner for that.
Is that a question you can put out on that Florida Airport Council blog? See what other airports. I know I fly into Williston and they got pine trees all over the place, and I know they're not there just for beauty.
Yeah.
They've got to be doing harvesting. Have you ever flown into Williston? They've got pine trees growing. I mean, I wonder if the Florida Airport Council could Do you ever contact anybody on that, or?
Yeah, but not for trees. I think you need to know which airports are.
At tree farms or
Just
whatever?
contact them.
Or is this some, of course, you probably don't want to cloud the waters anymore with Couture or Ryan, but is that something you could ask Ryan on your next conversation, or you
No, we
don't?
don't want to go there. We are so unique because we're in two counties and we're so large. Now, that's a blessing in one way, but in another way, it's not.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Palatka what, a 780 acre airport? They have an industrial park there, but I don't see any timber there. And I don't know about Williston, if what their actual footprint is, that the city oversees that as well. So that might be a resource, so talk to someone at Williston about theirs. Does Live Oak, no timber there?
260 acres.
Okay.
They have timber.
And that's the thing, a lot of these airports that were military training bases
Yeah,
were very small. They still have a very small footprint. We don't.
right. Now, I know Cecil does forest harvesting, but they're a totally different system. They're a large system. It might be worth some information, talk to somebody at the airport perhaps, but I'm sure they have much more resources.
Well, I think what Ms. Hall's asked us though is, as a board, we need to give her some guidance. We have a master forestry plan that was put together by Carlton Scott with Florida Forest Service. And we reviewed that, but now given the information that we're aware of this grant assurance, as far as funding, I think what she's wanting to know from us, okay, so do I need to modify this plan and then put something in place that changes so that we can either thin or harvest to develop a revenue source and an income so that then we can do something else?
You know, what changed too is the plan, when she developed it, was to get grants to fund for those things, right?
Well, that was what we all were under the assumption that that was going to be a
So that's,
benefit.
yeah, so that's what I think has changed it
And
too,
that
is
hadn't
where,
panned out so far.
yeah.
Yeah,
So as long,
We haven't qualified for the grants that we
Twice.
submitted.
right,
So that did throw another wrinkle in what our original plan was for funding.
So if we go in and harvest, my only thought is, and it doesn't matter what our thoughts are, if the rules apply. But if we go in and take timber out, and we take timber out and we let wild growth come back in, we're gonna be stuck with wild growth. Because biomass is just not selling, I don't think. It's just not, that was something that everybody thought was gonna be the new thing. Does Gainesville run that plant very often? Are you familiar with that electric
It's had
plant?
some issues. It's been closed and.
Yeah,
unclosed
and
and
so
I don't know
if
what
you
it is
don't put
currently.
tines back, but then you said the return is generally over that 20 years, maybe 6 or 8%. That's kind of a downer too, like you said. You invest your money all that period of time.
I think we have to acknowledge, at least in my mind, that forestation isn't going to be a revenue producer for the airport of any significant value, right?
at least in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what it'll be in 20 or 30 years from now, but, I mean, that's not what's going to keep the airport afloat, cutting trees. It's going to be our airport operations, our business development, late leases and selling fuel and those kinds of things.
Right.
So
mean, for
that's not to say that we
information's-
shouldn't still try to manage the forest,
Right.
responsibly, but
I'd be glad to reach out to a couple other airports and see how they do that.
the forestation thing.
Yeah,
I think, like you say, I don't think any of them are our size, that, the 200-acre airport isn't gonna.
Well, and I just assume Williston is
Williston.
still in theirs because the pine trees are planted in rows. They're clearly planted.
But are they actually on the airport property?
I believe they are, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that's just the one that comes to mind. I don't know. But if we were able to get the grants from Florida Forestry Service, then maybe we're not in violation because we're not spending money on the
Right,
trees.
exactly.
So maybe we just have to apply a few more years until we get in good
Get lucky.
favors or whatever, and,
Or if it's a self-sustaining endeavor, I think that's that's another thing that avoids the grant 25 assurance problem.
Yeah.
Grant assurance 25. So,
When was the last harvest? The most recent harvest?
The most recent harvest was probably like 2015.
and that's why we can't really find, we try to look back and figure out what's
we've had one
revenues
since.
that
Yeah, the question.
Well,
is,
there
where did
there
that
might have been
revenue
another
go?
one, but I had it at one point, I've got it drawn up, but there were 3 or 4 that.
And at the time, I hear they were in a legal battle also that
Probably 5 years or 4 years.
airport funding.
So
Years
David,
already.
I think, can-
Chad did it probably a year or two before I'm sorry.
I think he had
That's what he
a
said.
question for you, David.
David, do you, am I remembering the same as you? There was a period of time where the airport needed revenue and you sold timber and put that into operations expenses,
Correct,
legal, et cetera.
correct.
So I do agree, historically, I didn't help the board, but in '08, when I started attending board meetings, there was a plan to harvest, put that money back into the next prep and the next planting, and keep what you could off the top. But when you had several years where you were covering other expenses that airport revenue wouldn't cover, I think that process got in the hole
Yeah, he
because
did.
you were skimming off and then fires. I just think that process kind of got broke at that period of time, but
Mhm.
I think you're reading the grant assurance right, in terms of that should operate as an enterprise fund. Silviculture should be self-supporting
Right,
or have its own grant sources.
right. Like a Florida Forestry Service grant or something like that to
Right,
fund it.
yeah.
So, my thought is that we continue the forestry plan with an effort to pay or to initially harvest in order to build an income, and then with that income, pay for the rest of the program. Is that something that you think is doable?
I'm not sure, I just wanted some clarification on it. I just, and I want to be sure all the board members were aware of it or whatever, because
Yeah.
it's, going forward, this is a whole new procedure, a whole new way of doing it than
Yeah,
when we initially started this whole process. And so if we're going to have a new procedure for it and everything, I just thought that maybe we ought to have a motion and everybody vote on, adopting that so that it's very clear how it's going to be handled,
okay.
if y'all agree.
You think you could maybe call before the next meeting and get some information, or you said you'd be willing to reach out to like Cecil and Williston?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll know something next month.
Do you want to table it till next month as to the answering her question? Okay. All right. Well, Bernie, you're up next.
I'm good, sir.
Mr.
I've
Coon,
talked too much.
we always wear you out by this time, so you never have anything to say. Mr. Van Zandt is not much longer to be our city manager, is that true?
I can provide that update.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Van Zandt couldn't be here tonight, so I'm representing, as many of you may know, Mr. Van Zandt turned in his resignation as the city manager. He's going to be moving on to be the city manager in Treasure Island near St. Petersburg. Last night at the city council special meeting, the city council appointed me to serve as the interim city manager.
Oh, congratulations. Good.
Until the 1st of December, and so I'm tasked with getting the budget figured out. And once we get the budget done, I'll facilitate the process for a search for a future candidate.
Okay.
That's all I had tonight. Unless there are any questions in the city.
No, Craig, we're working on our budget too. And you want it from us, what is it, mid-September? Is that when our deadline was to get him our budget?
Well, I think the city council votes on budget September, the first meeting in September. So we need to have ours done prior to that.
Okay.
August.
I
think it's the 15th.
By the August.
That's when we
I think
vote.
August the 15th is, I think that's the deadline, but we should have that by our August board meeting, so we can approve it.
That's August 12th, right?
Mhm.
So we got
Right.
weeks basically to have our budget so that we can have it at the August meeting. That's all right.
And I completed the minutes for our workshop yesterday, and I included some detail on a couple of items that Craig was going to get some additional information on in comparing a QuickBooks P&L budget versus actual and what he had provided the board. So he's working through that, but we can go ahead and get those minutes to the board.
So what should be our next steps for the budget so that we're ready to submit it to the board on the 12th of August?
Well, I think what will have to happen is Craig will have to come back with another proposed budget for us to review, which would include the things that we talked about yesterday in the workshop, so that at the August meeting, then we could approve that budget.
Okay. So you'll just do that via email to everybody before our next meeting?
Yeah, I think that's the best way
Okay.
for him just to share that. Once he updates what we discussed yesterday in the workshop and these other questions about some other funding, get that out to the board and have the review, look through it, and be ready to discuss it in the August meeting.
Okay. Sounds good.
And just for clarification too, are you gonna send in that same format with the up to this date and then, because that confused some people. I mean, no, sorry, you're that people.
I'm not people.
I'm with you. I addressed that with Craig, so.
It is
we'll-
confusing for.
We'll get that resolved.
Okay, okay. And I did remember when you spoke, so Charlie had asked us to get Craig's evaluations to him first so he could do the tabulation. Should we now be sending
Yeah.
this thing to him first?
It'll go to him.
So what is the deadline? You're gonna get it where we can all get on this drive and, no, you're gonna email it out to us.
Correct.
And then we will fill it out. And when is our deadline? Is it before next?
Remember now, is it like mid-August?
August the 12th or something? or-
We'll include that in the email we send you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't have that timeline in front of me that we
and then
we
you'll want
approved.
us to forward, your email address will be,
So I'm getting it set up, so by the time y'all are ready, citymanager@keystoneheights.us.
That's the same.
okay, oh, that's right, and then
We'll
everything.
get it.
It should all come.
Okay, okay. That was what I had forgot.
Good. All right. Anything else for anyone on the board? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Happy 4th, everybody.
You too.
Yeah.
Y'all got my memo? You're all off on Friday? Sure,
Appreciate that.
yes.
I just want to know, did you order shirts like that for all of us?
I know.